Welcome to Alan Fulle's Art Interviews. I am your host, Alan Fulle. I interview artists from the Pacific Northwest and beyond.
Alan Fulle's Art Interviews.
Doug,
Nice to see you.
how's it going?
It's going great. It's going great. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me on your show. This is awesome.
Thanks for coming by and visiting the studio and the garden.
It's been great. It's beautiful out there. It's really beautiful. It's springtime, summer, almost. It's awesome. It's really good. Second time I said awesome. Last time I said.
So introduce yourself.
My name is Doug Parry. I'm a painter and a draftsman and an art educator. So they say, teacher, art teacher. And I'm almost 60 years old and looking forward to it because, when we went to school, they told us you wouldn't really be good until you got to 60. So I thought, oh yeah, this will finally be my year. But no, it's, I'm from the Northwest. I'm from Auburn, Washington. I live in Auburn, Washington now. I actually live in my childhood home. And in fact, my childhood bedroom is my current studio, which is both wonderful and freaky every moment of the day. But it's been good, especially in our economy, to have that house down there in Auburn where everything is cheap. But it's isolating. It's a little bit far down there sometimes, but it's good to be there. I have a nice big garden too, which you'll hopefully see soon. And it's been a really good experience down there, working down there. My wife Andrea's down there. She makes jewelry down there too, and so it's kind of this art house as well. And it's been wonderful. It's been a wonderful life. I've been down there since 2013, and lots of things other than the economy got me going down there. It was the house I grew up in, like I said, but my mom had lived there, and then in 2013 she passed away after a long battle with her health. And my sister and I were going to flip the house and just get rid of it and sell it off. But it turned out to be a thing where it's let's just keep this and keep working on it. And it's been really fun to do some things that to the house that my dad wanted to do. He passed away when I was about 25. And so there was always that kind of thing, like trying to catch up and, help my mom out. And that got my mom and I really close too when my dad passed. And so even though I lived in New York, between between 1996 and 2007. And, but that was a great run. I met every single goal that I set for myself in New York. But I came home one time for Christmas and saw that my mom she'd turned that corner, where my mom's getting older. And my then wife wanted to get out of New York, and I had established some things that I wanted to establish there, so I felt like I could finally leave. I didn't want to leave. I mean, I would still do it again, for the sake of my mom and stuff. But New York was a really, really fun and amazing place to live and work in. But when I came back, it was good to help her out and, see friends I haven't seen in 10 years and just kind of become a Seattleite again. And I don't like to use the term bi-coastal because it sounds far too fancy for a guy like me, but it did become that where most of the exhibiting I do now is in New York with a gallery. I've had a couple different galleries there since I moved there, and then since I've been back here. So it is kind of that going both ways, but it was family that brought me back here. And I think that's something that I've learned how to spread that out. Everybody I know, it's nice to get back into it because I've been gone for so long. I did come back and people say, "Are you here visiting?" and stuff no, I'm back. Some people are gone. Some people have moved. Some people had moved from here to New York when I moved there too, and they're still there. But it's nice to be back here. It's nice to, as much as I love the rat race in New York and the competition, which really helped me as a painter. Now that I'm this age, and I'm sure you're experiencing this too, where it's like kind of not done learning, I'm always going to learn, but kind of done trying to figure out how to grow up or develop. Like now it's kind of living that, and there's still lots of things I tweak in my life and with my art and interactions and even my teaching and things, all the time tweaking things. But it's nice to be able to work now. It was Greg Lundgren one time told me, he goes, New York's a great place to make it, but Seattle's a great place to make art. And he was really right, because I have to, like I confess, for as much as I love, like, oh God, run for the train, like, oh, this is such a New York time I'm living, having my own car and driving again, or, having a little bit more calm schedule, just because life is a little bit more mellow here, has enabled me to make art, I think, more fluently, because I've done a lot of learning. I've done a lot of all the things I want to do to get myself there. So now that I'm back, and I feel like I've done, good things for my family, not that I'm looking for praise for that, but it feels good. It makes me feel like, oh, good, I have a family, even if it's kind of past tense in a way. To come back to all this has been pretty wonderful and heartwarming. That sounds like a cheesy thing, but it really does feel that way. It's like, oh, good, I'm closer to my sister, I'm closer to my family, and I feel like I've earned the idea, earned the privilege to slow down a little bit now. Like I've always, like to be really competitive and really, really work all the time. Now to be able to kind of calm down and know that I'm going to still cook along and get stuff done, but to not have an ulcer doing it, and not, I when I was in New York too, I remember waking up almost every day anxious. And I was woken up almost every day by street noise, because I had an apartment on the first floor of this, right on the street. And so every day it'd be like something going off, an explosion or something happening. And I'd wake up in a start, even when I didn't have to get up, and that doesn't really happen anymore. And I feel my soul kind of mellowing out from that experience. But that's a little bit about me, all over the road there. But that's the way I am too, man.
So you brought a really cool painting. Tell us about this painting, and what's the title?
The title is Are You Fucking Kidding Me? And I just, a lot of titles I try to keep them like one word, and this is it's actually hashtag AYFKM, question mark. And there's not much in the way, other than, unless I explain it, and unless someone found it first, but the reason that I gave this piece that title was just to have this model, Isis, who's a friend of mine, and that's the case pretty much 100% of the time, is my models are friends, and they're professional models or otherwise. But I started this series, and it started with maybe one or two paintings before her wanting to paint from observation. And I mean, we were talking about this earlier, but I was divorced a while back, 10, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, and had to move. My stable life was over, and I had to move out of this house that I remodeled and all this stuff, and it was heartbreaking and all those kind of things. And I moved into like what I was calling the Heartbreak Hotel in above Luna Park Cafe in Seattle, which was a great place, a really fun bunch of neighbors and things, and a really good place to kind of settle and get my feet underneath me again. And like I was saying outside, the first thing I thought was like, oh man, I'm 47 and I'm divorced, and I'm going to turn into Tom Selleck or something and have a midlife crisis and start driving a red Corvette convertible. And one of those things I said to myself, like in this, like, oh, I'm going to take, the world's my oyster now, screw everything. I'm just going to do what I want. And I have a new job as a teacher. I got the world in the palm of my hand. And I'm just going to paint nudes all the time and just be the Seattle Lucian Freud. And by the time I finished thinking that, I thought, that's not me. What am I doing? But eventually, and on top of doing a lot of portraiture, and having switched how I made art completely between 96 and now, because before going to New York, I was making representational work that was probably 60% abstract and 40% realism. And there were no rules. And that's okay. But it was very chaotic, and it was very much based on expressionist ideas, arriving at an image and not really having a preconceived notion, maybe thinking of some theme, religion or something like that, or anti-religion something, and putting it down and hoping to get there. But changing my ways as I went to grad school, and that was the reason I went to grad school too, was to just to hone my realism skills, because I wanted to be able to tell a better story visually. And much to many people's chagrin, I came back from New York a realist painter, and I took some hits for that. And I'm still going to tell you what this is about. But I took some hits for that from people, for not being an abstract artist anymore. And it's okay, but it was a lot of it was, whoa, you're taking a step backwards. You're doing this figurative stuff. Like, that's kind of been done. And I didn't even listen to that, because I'd seen that. I've seen like lots and lots of figurative galleries, contemporary figurative work when I was in New York. And I felt that was, this is my home because of that. There's a lot of company here. And there's a lot of abstract painting there too. Like most of my instructors, if not all of them, no, that's not true. The ones that helped me learn how to take the steps to be a better realist weren't, but the rest of the MFA faculty at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn was abstract. But they were formalists, which was great because it finished my undergrad degree. Because they spoke to me a lot about, like, what is your paint quality about? Like, real finishing school type stuff. Like, what is the form? Color and form are inseparable. Things that I didn't really get as a printmaking major because I wanted to draw more as an undergrad. And so I never had that, other than a couple classes, a real like painting experience, apart from hanging out with you or talking to other artists and going, what are you doing? Or going to shows or sitting at bars. I mean, that's the way I got into bars, was sitting around with Larry Reed or Dave Kane or Andy Gerber, God rest his soul, was a great guy. I remember talking to him in the Comet and shutting down that bar a couple times, just talking about the woes of being a painter and what it's about. Like, that's why I was so interested in this interview too. It's like, it wasn't just like, hey, who do you know and all this kind of stuff. It's like, what did you make this with? Which is, I think, very important now, because it's a different kind of art making for me from before, but it's even more about materials now. But going back to saying I lived in the Heartbreak Hotel and decided to go, okay, I won't go total Lucian Freud, have 30 kids or whatever from all my models and things like he has. I decided to work with portraiture and start to get things from people. And like you're doing right now, like, what are we about? What are we talking about? Who are you? Type stuff. And I started a series just of portraits I call Friendshipsters, just to make a joke on hipster and all that kind of stuff. And I had people over while my mom was in hospital and I was starting this teaching job, and just got, like I said, just got divorced and was needing to see my friends and needing to connect and also needing to make art, and thought I wasn't going to be able to because of what was going on in my life. And working with people one-on-one and talking with them and getting the most I can out of them, and not trying to sap them of something to put their energy into a drawing, but to learn about them, because it almost made the drawing like, that's what we did. It's like if we're sitting in a bar and you tear up a coaster, that's kind of the drawing to me in a way. This part was much more what I needed. And it didn't hurt to focus and go, okay, how do you work that nose and the sinal bone and all this kind of stuff? But it started, when I started talking to people and really, like, when people really let their guard down with me, and people do, like most of these, like I said, they're friends, so we already have that level of, confidence and comfort. But drawing more and more women and friends, and drawing double portraits of people, of 2 or 3 women together. And also, I mean, like the idea of trying to figure out what happened, good or bad, to get me in that situation. Why was I divorced, right? Helping my mom, like ushering her to the end of her life, pretty much helping her out, helping her die and things. With, the exception of doing things that I couldn't do, because she's a woman, I'm a man, helping her with her health and things. I couldn't really clean up after. I had a lot of nurses and things help me. But I really realized how many mentors I had, how many more important mentors I had in my life that were women. My sister, my female friend, Sienna Reed, is a really close friend. I mean, it goes who's an artist too, and on and on and on. And while I really love my male friends, I think I've learned more, at least I was looking for more from my female friends. And I love that. I love that I have, and it's not uncommon, of course, but I have a lot of female friends, and it's not a thing like, it's not a sexual thing. And that it's absolutely not. It has been. Everyone has that type of experience, but the percentage of that's really small. And that you move along with this. And then it was a while later, 3 or 4 years later, I met someone else, Andrea, who I eventually got married to. So I remarried. And she is incredible, in that she's cool with me being an artist. Which we all know that's not the easiest thing to do. It's like, why do you have to paint every day? I joke with my students and I say, if I had a nickel for every time someone said, do you have to paint every day? And, I would be rich. We'd all be rich. But, I mean, those are the kinds of things that I would just go, nope, this relationship's not going any farther than this, because I needed to do what I needed to do, and I wouldn't put someone through it anymore if they're like, I'm the painting widow, I never get to see my husband because he's always at the studio or something. But Andrea is cool about it. She also makes her own art. She makes jewelry, and she's a nurse too. She's an ICU nurse, and we help each other. And we help each other, like people do in a relationship. But she's really guided me in a lot of different ways and has helped me mature as a person. Part of it, I think, is because she's British a little bit, and there's that real like, don't complain type of trip going on, which has helped me not be so, I've kind of calmed down and come into myself a little bit because of bouncing our personalities out. But it's been incredible. And it's also showed me more aspects of the other women friends I have and how they are very, very strong. So to answer your question, everything was just humming along like that. And I thought, okay, I'm a portraitist. This is great. I'm a portrait artist. I have no problem with that. And I love what I'm getting. And I know that the realm of that, and I know how big it is, how many portrait artists there are, and how common that is. And so it makes me just go, what's going to make mine different? And it's never been something that's been materials necessarily that are like really avant-garde in that sense. Like, this is so different. Or even poses, although I'm trying to make every piece more and more dynamic and play with light more and more than I have been. It really started to click though, when 2016 when Donald Trump became president, and especially when Roe v. Wade was overturned. When I started seeing that this is just, so many people said it right off the bat that plan looked like it was The Handmaid's Tale, right? And so I found that instead of saying like, yeah, man, I'm going to be all 47 and have midlife crisis and just paint nudes all the time and have my fun. Instead, I've turned my focus to representing women. And people often say like, well, how can you represent women? You're a man. What do you have to say about this? I don't know. I have no idea what I can say about this, because it's ultimately not me to say. It's women are going to comment on what it's like to be a woman in this day and age, in this country. But I've read this before, I've thought about it a lot, but if men don't speak up for women, they're going to continue to have these problems because men are causing them. It's like old white men are signing away women's rights to have an abortion. You name it, like unfair pay, unequal pay, just sexism in general. People who are, a woman having to walk down the street is not like how it is for us at all. It's 180 degrees different. Every eye is on them going, oh, I could fuck her. Oh, maybe not. Oh, she's fat or she's skinny. Like, we don't have that. Women don't do that to us. And if they did, we would probably do something about it, right? So I wanted to take up that and paint these women. And I'm painting them in my house, right? That's the window that I used to sneak out of when I was a kid. She wants to escape, more or less. At least that's what I'm trying to portray a touch. Because she wants to get out of this crappy situation that she's in, which I'm generalizing, right? I use the studio as my backdrop because it's architecture and it's not, just a drapery or something. but it's also something that's kind of spooky and be able to relate to it, because I don't know how to I can't completely relate to what a woman is saying when she says you don't know what it feels like to have a pair of eyes staring at you all the time, or looking at your butt all the time, or your breasts while you're trying to talk to someone. I can't connect to that. I can connect to, and this is one of the reasons, besides having a really nice garden in the backyard, that I moved into that house, was that I had some trauma in that house. I mean, I grew up with some very strict parents who were great parents. They loved me and my sister. But I was scared to death of my dad. Like, you did not screw around with my dad because he would kick your ass. And people go, oh, that's fine. I go, no, my dad would kick my ass, period. Like, I didn't mess with him. I didn't have a beer until I got out of high school, man. I was terrified of that guy. And, that's my life and whatever. But I bring from place to place in that household, in the different rooms. Like, if something happened to me that was harsh, or my dad and I argued, or just a place like I'll remember something, I may put a model there. And then I'll tell that model, hey man, when I was a kid, I had a bad experience like it here in general, whatever. And I want you to pose this way. Well, what do you think about posing like this? Because what I want to express is that you're cornered. That this is what a way a woman feels. And I'll discuss that pose with them. And Isis is an incredible model and an actress too. She's an amazing actor. So the idea was that she was going to be one of the first poses to try to show women going, what? And you, like, I'm standing up to this. And it's subtle a little bit, and maybe that shows how insurmountable it can be sometimes. But, having her pose and sitting there, and it's a pretty simple pose, really. I mean, I can't speak to that because I'm not the model, but to have her stop and go like, are you kidding me? Every 5 minutes. And it's a subtle expression, but, it's a figurative painting. I want it to be about anatomy and fabric and draping and shadows and light colors and shadow colors. And it kind of scratches the surface, but I do really love this painting because the composition's so out of whack, and there's palette knife painting and glaze painting and alla prima painting and all sorts of stuff going on in there. But I just think it's successful, and I like the way the flesh feels or looks. It has a certain braid to it, and I can feel the bony landmarks and stuff, and it's for those kind of figurative art things. I feel like it's working. And they're getting stronger. She's actually going to sit for another painting where I'm going to take that chair and turn it, put it right here, and then take the POV and look right out the window as if she's going to crawl out the window. And not like, here goes my leg, I'm crawling out the windows, but like still just kind of that. My challenge is to see if I can bring the viewer to that same tension that she's going to escape without it being too over the top. And now it's also, too, in addition to this, I mean, the primary focus is that people know that as a man who can only have to be those 9 letters of my name, Doug Parry, there's a guy named Doug Parry who's representing women, and then I move aside. And that's easy for me to do, and it's probably what I also like to do as an artist. Like, I like going to art openings. I kind of like, I don't smoke anymore, but I used to love that because I could sneak out of the show and smoke and not have to be in the thing. Like, I've almost missed, because of smoking in my life, the entirety of almost every show I've had because I've snuck out of it at some time. I don't, I want to depart from it. But if what my wish is true, that what happens is that the model and the painting are the thing that get represented. And I think that that's probably me, and we've talked about this before too, me trying to say that that's what's the most important thing. And I really agree with you that how important community is. And honestly too, you've rekindled that fire for me to go like, there's a lot of really good people in the Seattle art community that I need to reconnect with. And it's been, COVID, moving back, and people dying, and all the different stuff, and new jobs, and living a million miles away. But too bad. It's good to be together with people. It really is, and it's incredible to feel that way again, and that you have stressed the importance of that, and not in a guilty way, like, oh, come on, do it, but like just the beautiful way of it has really been something that's been great with me. And I don't know. I think I'm probably getting off topic there a little bit, but it's good to be back, and it's good to be making this kind of work, and it's good to start connecting with people either at my home or elsewhere. I guess what I was going to say was It's always been, to me, the most important thing is this thing, not me. And I like this. It's fun. I mean, who wouldn't want to be interviewed? This is terrific. But it's a challenge for me to go like, okay, how much better can I make a painting so someone takes a double take at it? And I finally got to that place in my life where I've always admired people for saying, no, man, nothing matters. How's the painting looking? I'm going to change this. And watching artists, watching you're one for sure, just in the studio visit we did, like, here's a series and then here's how it developed and here's another one. It's like, that's mastery. That's strength to me, to be able to go. Victoria Haven, she does that as an artist. She really experiments with things and will put up something that's just crazy different from what she had done before, but then you can still connect with it, and I just think the number one thing that my goal is, besides the content, and now I feel like I've got more importance with the content, something that's more vital.
Do you have another piece to show us?
I do. I'll go get it right now. It's a little picket sign I've got. Hi, everybody. He's gone off camera. I did this painting recently. I'm also doing little headshots. I'll give everybody a look to see what this is about. I did a series kind of by accident of picket signs before. And it was a show I had at the Carnegie Gallery with Darren Smith. And we didn't have enough room on the walls to do all these drawings I had made. It was a big, huge show. And so I mounted the drawings on picket signs and people carried them around. And I always loved that. It was the funnest thing because they were getting all dinged up and ripped up and stuff too, and people were hitting each other with them. But I was like, art, people are having a good time. This is great. So I Velcroed this one on there so it would show up, and I thought, ta-da, what? Yeah, I've saw these forever during all the marches and protests. I was trying to also work in a series of smaller paintings with this series too. The series, by the way, is called Woe, as in woe is me. And it's the woe of women. And I also like to paint still lives because it's a really good practice to keep my chops up for painting figures and things. And I thought, what's something that I can paint that goes with this series? And I decided with that part of this body of work that painting pictures of something wasn't the way to go with this. It is a way for me to go. I love still life painting. But instead of painting a picture or something, I was going to paint something. And so, while this is still a painting that's a picture, it's mounted to this, so it starts to become an object. I thought about doing portraiture on things like, do you remember those pink, what are they called, like the cat ear hats there, the pussy hats? I was thinking of doing a portrait on there of a woman in distress. A balaclava, the ski masks that people were wearing during the BLM portraits, like doing portraits on that, or bandanas and things like that. I'm working on that. Those surfaces may be a little rough for as fine as I want to make these renderings. But to start off with this, I even had people say, like, you need to print 100 of those and take them out to places and protest with these things. But this is the beginning. That's my wife. That's her portrait. These paintings, instead of having still lives and have these objects, also include, the series will have 30 portraits of the 30 strongest women I know. And like Andrea, who I'll have sit for a photo shoot. And those paintings I do from photographs, which is really fun because I haven't worked from photographs probably since about 96. And it's a little bit shooting fish in a barrel because it's all there. But it really is beautiful because it allows me to come back to brushstroke and some stuff I did before all this, before the realism. And those photo shoots are great because I ask the sitter, will they come over? And I tell them what the series is about, like I'm doing now, and say, okay, here's the camera all set up. and it's all happy and cookies, and we're having a nice lunch, and then it'd be like, okay, so how's your life changed since 2016 and since Roe v. Wade's been overturned? And these beautiful smiling faces drop, and their eyes either look right into the lens of the camera or they sharply look over to the side. But then they start telling me their truth, their story about what happened, whoever it's about, how they feel about it. And it's not always this rage where let's go do this. It's a lot of it. But the other half of those, and another reason to continue with the series, is that it's just fear. And I don't know what I'm going to do. How do I protect myself against this? And the things that are looming now with the elections and all these court cases and things, like it's scary. Like the promises of the right are terrifying, and they're fascist. And these women are recognizing that. And so the photo shoots I get are grim. I get 100 photos of headshots that I think are good photographs to make into paintings. But it brings me to tears oftentimes as I look at my best friends, these people that are strong for me, who are being pressured by people who don't know them, people who make these random decisions so they can make more money, or they can say something that's good in God's name that they make more money. But those little headshots are great. They've been coming out great. And so the show altogether, when it happens, will be probably 20 paintings that size or bigger, a few odd-sized pictures, maybe a couple study drawings, and then 30 portraits. And that will be hopefully in 2026 at Loromoto Gallery in Ridgewood, Queens, in New York. So yeah, there's that stuff. That's what the work's about. That's what that piece is about. Can I put this down? I'll just lay this right here for a moment.
So, do you have a religious or spiritual affiliation with any kind of experience?
When I was in college, when I was a kid, we would go to church because it was right around the corner. And my parents probably grew up going to church too, but we would do like Easter and Christmas type stuff. And it was the neighborhood church too, right? And it was pretty mellow. It was like Methodist church. So it was just kind of, there's a Bible and you sing a couple hymns and go home. And I was just a kid. I didn't know one way or another. And then I go to college and was away from that. And again, it was like rare that we'd even go to church. And I had my friends in high school and junior high and whatever who were religious, who would pop in and out. And our family, different members of our family would get religious here and there. But I didn't really mess with it much or think about it much. And then I got to college and then started getting kind of approached by people who were in these big college church groups. And a couple of them, I played football in college, and a couple of them were athletes too. And I was pretty lonely, and it's a kind of a lonely existence when you play college football, because you start school in August and you're there for 2 days for a long time, and then suddenly students come on campus after maybe your second or third game into the year, and you go, okay, now I'm going to be a college student. And it's hard to meet people other than other football players. And while I really loved the guys I played football with, they were football players, and it was that one dimension. And I would go and find a different experience when I was in the art building or what have you, and it was very different, as you can imagine. But enough of those guys started talking to me that I started to go to a couple, like Young Life or something like that. And they were really charismatic, born again, kind of fundamentalist Christian things, organizations. And that kind of stuck with me for a while. It gave me some I guess, strength during football and things like that. And it was pretty much, I just thought, oh, this is normal. This is Christianity and things. And, but, in that, starting to get my sea legs, I guess, and understanding college. I was about a junior in college, started dating a woman, and she wasn't a Christian. And I started to see, like, oh yeah, this isn't the only way to live. But I don't know the Bible verse, but it's something like, thou shalt love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, body, and soul. And I really felt that the organizations or the different churches I was trying out were skipping out on the mind part. And they were really talking down science and things like that. They were talking down abortion a lot. And I just thought, this isn't, if there is a God, I was always I was the biggest fan of doubting Thomas in the Bible, because he was always kind of like I was, going, I guess I'm supposed to do this, but and there were those few rare times where I felt better because of the Lord and all that kind of stuff. But now I know that's because I was happy for once or something. And so I left it. I did pretty much an about face and took off, and never went back, really. I'd gone to church maybe a couple times to go see something. With my mom, I would go to church with her because she needed someone to help her walk there. But as far as like organized religion and things like that, or Christianity, I just don't do it. And I'm terrified at the idea of Christian nationalism, and that, you know, you're going to be kind of judged on how good of a Christian you are, and Christian family values, all these things, the Muslim ban, and all these things that Trump is promising. And I just don't see as many problems arise from being an atheist as I do from being a Christian, you know. And I think a lot of people take advantage of that stuff. And I think that Jesus was way cool. You know, I think that the teachings are incredible, but I don't think that's it, you know. So the organized religion, I'm moving away from it. I don't necessarily, I did make a lot of art. Right after I got out of school, I made everything black, and it was all upside down crosses and knives and things that were just like not Christian. I don't know what knives had to do with it, but it was, you know, that kind of thing. And it was a big upheaval in me. But now it's just kind of mellow with them staying where they are, and I'm just going to stay where I am. And I don't want to get judged by it, because I think that's a bummer. So that's pretty much it. I like Buddhism. I like Hinduism. I like that kind of stuff. I keep all the fortunes from all my fortune cookies. Does that count? In a bowl. It's very ritualistic. I am into ritual in a way, but more process, you know. That's kind of, I've said it a million times too. I'm sure you have. Maybe everyone says it if they're not into church, that your studio is your church, you know, or that the meditation time I have is making art. And it seems to be that way more and more as I get older too. And I kind of love that. I find that I learn things and just be painting away and go, oh yeah, that's what that's supposed to do. Well, I go back to work, and it could be something about gardening or interpersonal relationships or whatever. Just like the peace I find there is incredible. And that's been something I've been looking for my whole life, really, when I think about it. Some kind of, not agitation, not fear of my parents scolding me, not fear of God getting pissed off at me because I didn't do something right at the church or whatever, you know, I didn't go on a Sunday. And not having, honestly, the pressures of maybe school, but also of like sports and things. That was a lot. You know, I remember standing in the art building, and for, like I said, for as much as I thought it was a great experience, and now it was difficult, because I'd stand there in the art building with you and other students listening to a lecture and going, I have to leave at 1:00 to go get my ankles taped and go practice for 3 hours or 5 hours, whatever it is. And then I'll go back to there when everyone's gone and gone home for dinner or something, and stand in the studio by myself and work away. And it was sad. I remember standing in a sculpture class and almost crying, because I was just listening to this beautiful lecture this teacher was giving, and thinking, I have to leave. No. And then I remember one day just kidding with myself and saying, no, I'm not. This is the day I quit. I'm just going to stay here. And I stood there another extra 5 minutes and didn't leave class early. And it was like I hit a morphine in my heart. You know, it's just such joy to go, yeah. And to this day, every August, I go, I don't have to go to practice, you know. And I still wouldn't change that for the world, because I think it toughened me, and it gives us this story. You know, it's always been about trying to find relief, trying to find a respite or a place to hide. I mean, and that's another reason I moved back into this house too. Like I found ways to get away from it all, you know, laying in the backyard under these 3 giant birch trees we had, and these little spots we could kind of hide out in the secret garden, just get out of the house and stuff. And when I see those places now, and I can go like, I don't even need to be, I am relaxed. I have found all those places of peace in myself. I can go do whatever I want, wherever I want. I still will visit those places and kind of celebrate it and be like, yeah, oh, I did it. I'm relaxed. I'm finally my own person. You know, I'm finally me. And that was a huge thing for me, because I always felt like I was number 59, or I was just some guy, or was just another one of God's creatures, or my dad was mad at me. Like, he'd be mad at me for months on end. Like, okay. and that's hard to get out from underneath and not replicate as an adult, you know. And so this stuff has helped me a great deal in that. And ironically, my dad gave me the gift of art. My dad and my mom, they're both super supportive of that. They were artists in their own right, not the way we are, but they made art. And were, they worked and provided for my sister and I too. But yeah, life is good. I guess all in all, that's just the way it comes down to.
Why do you suppose your dad was so hard on you?
Because his dad was really hard on him. Yeah, my grandfather was a Welsh coal miner and moved to Auburn to mine at Black Diamond. And he was the kind of guy that had a washboard stomach, could always come in the house and go, "Hit me, Doug." And like, pound him in the stomach. He's like, "See," he's like 70 years old, right? No teeth, could still eat steak. And he did not spare the rod with my dad or my aunt. Like, he was tough on them. Like, when I say tough on them, that's kind of like how my dad was. He was brutal to them. That was old school stuff. Like, they grew up in the Central District. It was hardcore. And it wasn't the Central District with the fault. It wasn't that, but that's where they were. They were in a place that was in Seattle. That's where it happened. And he was, he had a drinking problem. He was abusive to his wife. It was nasty, And so my dad tried not to be that way. And I think that his strictness was to keep me, anyway, from, becoming bad or something. He really didn't want me to do anything. Like, when I started smoking, because he smoked, he was so shocked. Or if I had a drink, he would just be like, "No, you shouldn't do that stuff." So ultimately, he was trying to look out for us. But I think he was also he was also very paranoid, too, that we were going to slip out of his grip. And that was his own issue, too, his own problems he had that made him act that way. But yeah, I think it was because of his upbringing. And my mom's, too. My mom had a really hard upbringing, like locked in closets and abused and things like that. And my dad loved her like crazy, and I think tried to rescue her from her giant family of bad abuse, and was trying to rescue both of them. And what we had, my sister and I had, by comparison, was like 10% of that kind of stuff. But it was still enough for us to go like, "Whoa, it's, come on, it's 1973. Like, what are you doing?" So it wasn't terrible, but it was noticed. And in a lot of ways, I appreciate it. Like, I don't have kids. And by the time Andrea and I met, we both maybe wanted to have kids. We were too old to do it. But there's part of me that's like, I'm okay with not passing that on. I'm all right with that. I have nieces and nephews, and my sister has great kids, and the name keeps going. But like, I'm okay with not having to try to do that. I do that enough on my feet, just with friends and people I see on the street, to not be in any way like that. And with my wife too at home, like trying to be like really, really cool all the time with things and happy. And I have my times for sure. Anybody watching this video who knows I've blown up or done some stupid shit because I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm impatient or I'm insecure. And that's probably what it is, insecure, because it's that loop, right? Like, but I honestly think I'm breaking out, and that's honestly another reason why I want to make this work. It's kind of paying homage. I don't know if it's completely doing that, trying to, but that's why women are important, because I've seen so many women be abused in my life. It's I don't know how many women I've known that have been raped. I mean, tons, and it's or ripped off, or underpaid, or fired, or just assume the worst of them. And I just think that's why, I want to do the right thing and help people out that way, help women out. And men too. I mean, not this series, but, you're not a monster. You're a great guy. And a lot of people we know who are artists really work hard to be fair and equal and loving and supportive, right? And that's not something you see in the rest of the world. You don't see that in other occupations, other pursuits. In fact, they can be really bad, and other areas that are very similar. I mean, filmmaking, graphic design, game design. There's lots of places where people are still under the radar, but they're treating each other terribly. I just think that we could make a lot of difference. And it's been, I've never, like people always say art saves lives. And I go, no, doctors save lives, and you sell your painting at an auction to make money to get that doctor to save life. Art doesn't save the life. And art doesn't really do anything other than maybe educate, and I think that's what it needs to do, is nothing. It needs to just be beautiful and rock. It doesn't need a bunch of purposes. I always stuff junk in there to go, oh, by the way, I'm still talking about this. But that it's not important in that way to me. It just needs to be art, and I don't know if that connects to anything, but I guess it does connect back to the beginning of saying, to me, what's the most important thing is that I make this as best I can, so you, seeing it, enjoy it and learn from it, hopefully. And yeah, man, it's been fun. I love painting like this. I love it. We were in your studio talking about resin and stuff, right? And I've always loved that, because your old studio, what was it, Capitol Hill, where you had a house? Where you'd painted the roof of your garage? That was just insane, man, because that's the toxic studio. And I remember I'd leave the studio all the time if I'd visit two times, I think, there. And I'd just go, in the best way, go, that guy's crazy, man. What is he doing up there? And it's inspiring, because it's like, you're not screwing around. It wasn't like you're going to hope this isn't something weird. Like, you knew what you were doing. You're the great mad scientist of this stuff. And that's cool to me. And it's cool to me because it's like having a hobby almost. How people are like, oh, check out my cool new fly fishing stuff. And I got this new line of stuff. I'm getting that way with pigments and with mediums, although I still cop out. Like, the painting mediums I use now are just liquid. And it's probably going to make me die tomorrow. But it's what I used in grad school. And I mean, that was a pretty incredible experience. Like, my first week at Pratt in New York, there's a figure painting class. And it was taught by Frank Lind, who was then the dean, or the chair of the department, became dean of the department now, I think is retired. But a brilliant realist painter. He would do master copies and do a John Singer Sargent, like Madam X, that woman standing at the pedestal. But he'd paint it with a look-alike model and paint them nude. So he'd take all these things, these paintings, just take their clothes off. And he's a great guy. I come into his class, I got all the stuff to go, the easel and all the special paints they have us buy. And there's Kika, who's still a friend, this great Kika von Kluck, this terrific model. Used to be a model for Philip Pearlstein. And she'd come in there and stand in front of this brick wall with a radiator with a bunch of taxidermied animals and fabric dressed all over, because Frank would just litter the scene. And we'd have a pose. There were 6-hour poses for 6 weeks or so, or 3 weeks or something. It was a long time we got to work on these things. And he would say, every brick and every rung on that radiator, go. And be like, okay, here we go. And so I'm going back to, at that moment, that was 96, I'm suddenly transported back to Gene Pizzuto's class at Washington, where he's saying, pound it in, use a bigger brush and slap this stuff around. So I do that, and then the brakes just hit, and the teacher comes and taps me on the shoulder and he goes, rein it in, Doug. You got to rein it in. And that was hard for me, because I have that thing of coaches, my parents, and teachers. You still have to pass through a veil before I'm going to do what you tell me to do, because I've had some fucked up people tell me to do stuff I don't want to do. Not my parents, but just in life, right? So when I was being told, you got to rein it in, I was thinking no, don't tell me how to make my art, man. This is grad school. I'm paying you to tell me do this. But he was like, no, because you're not making what you want to make. Didn't you come here to do this? Well, let's do this. And taught me a couple steps in between, but was always don't lose who you are. You want to paint with that big brush and slap it around, do it. But you want to make it look good. Let's go in person to the Met today and look at John Singer Sargent. And I look at that and go, okay, that's amazing. And then I go down the hall and find a de Kooning and go, that's amazing. But after a while, I had to say, and it wasn't a very long while, I had to say the Sargent was more amazing, as was the Thomas Eakins. And then I get into Rembrandt. And then I get into these other, Caravaggio, for God's sake. And I just go, de Kooning was pretty good, but he ain't Caravaggio. And it's because I studied realism and abstraction as a formalist. So when and I'm not trying to say de Kooning's a bad painter, but when I see it in person, and then you go downstairs and go somewhere else and go see a Rembrandt in person, I'm like, that's closer to what I want. So he would gravitate towards it. But when I look at the skill level, it's much more in Rembrandt's favor too, because I know what it takes to make that abstract painting, and it's not skill to me. It doesn't mean it's unskilled. It's different than skill. And I think that's what makes it so cool, because this is about skill. And I've been ridiculed for that too by people who's like, well, so, and I've said it before too. Like I've said it straight to people's faces, like a monkey, you can train a monkey to be a realist painter because it's just technique, and it's skill is something you learn, right? You practice it. You can't learn to be de Kooning. You can't learn to be Alan Fulle. You can't, you can be the only one that can do that. That's why it's amazing, and it's not, there's still skill involved to be sure. Lots of craftsmanship too. But it's far more about heart. And I'm at least trying to bring that out of that bag of stuff that I used to have to put into these. And it still is, I'm still really conservative in this way anyway, and cautious about going too far out of it. Like, do I need to enlarge the figure so what would be a small brushstroke to make that deltoid can now come back as that whack of that Doug Parry 1991 painting? I don't want to do it enough, and I like establishing the fact that there's light on a shoulder, that a collarbone sticking out of, more than I can show you with a brush. I could really dazzle people with a brush stroke. And so I'm kind of going that way. But I'm liking not saying, oh, fuck abstraction, that's blah, blah. It's incredible. Like, I stood in front of Matisse's Red Studio, the Met, for like an hour once with a class around me going, and here's Matisse. Oh my God. And that's not even really pure abstract. Pollock, Joan Mitchell. Those paintings, man, the impromptu, wonderful floral stuff is the only way I ever want to paint landscapes. I'm a terrible landscape painter when it comes to, like, here's the foreground, middle ground, background. I know how to teach that stuff. I can talk about it forever. I know really great landscape painters, and I've made a couple pretty good ones. But I prefer to paint a portrait of a tree or to paint a big thicket of stuff, because it brings out my inner Joe Mitchell, just going, oh my God. And then I could be an abstract painter again and go, oh, look at the yellow just for the sake of yellow, right? So it still lives in there, and I still nurture it, but I put it away, because they don't work. Like, this is about the extent of me making kind of a realistic background. It's just a detail of my lawn, Like, I even had some potted plants. I'm like, oh, too much. I get rid of that. But yeah, it's I dig it. I've found ways to make him accurate by following steps, so it's step work. Like, this starts off either as there's a ground of raw sienna or a beautiful color that I like to use called greenish umber. And greenish umber is kind of like a hospital green, if you will, that if you cut it with titanium white, it gets to be almost the color of your shorts. But then its mass tone out of the tube is almost black. And so it's great for doing underpaintings. So I'll ground a coat on my painting, and then I'll usually use like a white Conte crayon and have the first session with the model just be a drawing on top of that. And then it's for the next 3 to 5 to 11 3-hour sessions after that. It's just value. It's just black and white, or raw sienna and white. Just that. And the reason I do that is because it's a traditional technique of doing an underpainting or a grisé with color glazes over the top of it, or even opaque glazes, but you practice it first in the painting. And it brings out my real, true, oldest love of art, which is drawing. So I always think that even if it's a brush on a value palette with black all the way up to white, it still feels more like drawing. So I feel like I control the realism more. And I make them so, if I paint it in that grisé, that black and white form, I want to make it so good that I don't want to color it. And so that's what I think makes the structure of them work, because I can really tear it apart and don't have to worry about anything else. And then like the last 2 sessions of the model, I'll use a medium like liquid, which dries fast. Are you familiar with that stuff?
I am. Have you tried Gamsol?
Yeah, I have tried. I probably should move there. Every time I think about I should switch to it, I go, oh, I'm out of liquid. I just go buy it.
I love liquid. It's a little brittle.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
And the vehicle's a little bit, it's kind of a low viscosity, so it's a little bit brittle. Whereas the Gamsol, I think, is a tiny bit more, the vehicle's a little more bulletproof.
Flexible too, is it?
Flexible, maybe a tiny bit.
That's good. That's good. I love students who use it. I hear you with it, because I use it really thin.
I did like Liquid, though. I mean, it was a solid product.
It's stinky. It's
And
really
it's
stinky.
super stinky, and I wouldn't recommend it. But it had a nice glaze, but I did notice that in some applications it just seemed like a little bit thin. And just like I wouldn't use an Alkyd or something like that, it's just I don't have faith in the vehicle. You know, it's just not it's not a good technology.
Yeah, it works with me because it's so. These are almost like hand-colored photos, and more so now. This is a couple months, so a year old actually, but like it's become the prep of the first surface, like even the gesso. Like I'm not the kind of guy that strains his gesso and gets the lumps and stuff out of it, or does linen and things. I've painted on linen with rabbit skin glue and that stuff, and it's nice, but it's not cost effective nor time effective. So it's a really good gesso job. Then it's a really nice rub it in, work it in, ground coat, and then even the top underpainting has been getting even enough, and I'm able to anticipate enough. Like if I'm going to glaze something with a darker color like red, but it's going to be transparent over a white, that's going to be really pronounced because it's going to get so knocked back. So I'm kind of gauging that, which has been great. And that's fun about it too. It's just like developing photographs or something. And on the other hand, though, when I do those smaller portraits, those are still all a prima, where I'll use a full palette. You know what's been fun too, the last since I've been teaching at DigiPen, this has been incredible because that's a video game design school, and I get hired as a traditional painter to do foundation classes. So we're going to teach gouache paintings of still lifes and stuff, or charcoal drawings. I'm like, this is great, this is so cool, and it's a really creative school, and it's different. It's kind of, it was actually also one of the only gigs in town. Like I moved back here in 2007, and went right away to Cornish and to the UW, and there was a hiring freeze. They're just like, I got a little bit of work from Cornish, and they were great. And Washington's great, but they were like, no, we can't hire anybody right now. And I was sitting, I'm jumping all over the place, aren't I? I was sitting in the parking lot. I was teaching at Kirkland Art Center, teaching some seniors, older grandmas kind of, which was great because he'd walk in and they'd pinch your cheeks, and it's 9 a.m. They'd, maybe even bust out a bottle of wine for themselves and stuff. But it was lovely because it's like, here are these 10, 60-year-old women who are trying to figure out how to paint. And it was just like, you rock because you're trying to figure this out. This is so fun. And it was, it's what it was. It was only one class. I wasn't making my nut on that. And I'm sitting in my truck freezing one winter morning, and the phone rings, and it was Eric Swangstu. He was a painter I knew at Pratt in New York, who moved to Seattle too. Eric passed away a few years ago. Unfortunately, like a heart attack out of nowhere. But he called me up and he goes, I got a job that's yours to lose. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, it's DigiPen. I go, what the F is a DigiPen? He goes, come see right now. I'll show you. It's a cool place. And so I go in there, and the job was for the, I think, developed curriculum for their high school program they have. And I was like, I got the job. I was really happy. He was right. And I did a good interview and everything. But then I got about halfway home and I realized I don't want to teach high school kids. I want to teach college kids. I can't do this. And I needed work so bad. But I said, I'm going to keep my eggs in that college teaching basket. And I called them back, or I emailed them back, and I replied all. But one of the people wasn't the high school. It was their it was Rob Kamek, who he was the chair of the fine arts department. He goes, why didn't you say you're a painter and needed a job? I got an opening right now in the undergrad. So I got a job in undergrad, like in the same day. So I go in there, and they go, okay, you're going to teach these fundamental classes. It's going to be really cool. You have small classes. These kids are really enthusiastic, and they really are. They're very creative and very different that way. And you should become familiar with Photoshop because this is a digital school. And one of the things he also said, and Rob is also a realist painter. He's from Boston. He's a really, really smart guy. a really talented artist. And he said, we were walking through the parking lot, and he goes, you're gonna talk about magenta, aren't you? And I was like, what? And I didn't know him very well, and I just thought, well, this is an interesting first personality thing. I go, what do you mean? He goes, cyan, magenta, yellow, that's their color base, right? And I go, yeah, okay. And as we're walking, I remember like seeing a little magenta flower growing up through the parking lot in the crack. I was like magenta like that, yeah. And I remember like thinking, I don't really use pinks too much. I mean, I use figurative stuff, but like I stay away from purples and things like that. Just I don't know why. Maybe because I'm so sick of purple from Washington all the time. Everything is purple. But our conversation continued, and it was about eventually became the idea of the color theory, which was part of the foundation stuff of getting away from the standard art school colors. Cad red, cad yellow, ultramarine blue, those cobalts and stuff like that, and go with colors that mimicked a computer screen, RGB, red, green, blue. Those are the three colors of white light, right? The three colors that are complementary to red, green, blue are cyan, magenta, yellow. And I had teachers come up to me and go, how can you be teaching color theory with CMY? Like, this isn't art history. How do you think they painted the Mona Lisa? And I'd have an art history book. I go, this Mona Lisa right here? And yeah, look at those ochres and stuff. I go, do you know how they printed that picture? With cyan, magenta, and yellow. You can make any color with those three colors, any color. And he's like, how about Hooker's green? How about, yellow ochre? I'm like, give me three colors and some white, man. I'll make it for you. And it's true. And it's wonderful. That's cyan, magenta, yellow. Everything except for Rossian or greenish umber. Those are the only two other colors I'll use that I don't care to mix. But it blows me away because I've learned Photoshop and I make digital art now too. I want to make a digital art exhibit sometime coming up. But when we think about real light, sunlight, and the glow of paintings and things, it's like the colors are more vivid than I'm experiencing. And it was really, really still is a little bit hard to control that magenta and getting those colors to work together. But man, once I get really humming greens and really gorgeous different variations of pinks and things that will happen on any skin color, it makes me understand that digital art isn't something that's just for those illustrators and stuff. There's always that difference in the camps. Like, I'm a painter, not an illustrator. It's like, and I've had tons of shit thrown at me for that. Like, you're an illustrator now. I'm like, oh, this isn't painting. Like, when do you think painting started in 1950? It's like, and too, the way we may have been educated, we had fundamental classes by people who were abstract expressionists, who had fundamental classes too. But after having gone through an honest-to-goodness abstract expressionist, maybe second, third generation, but those guys are blocking it out with big brushes all the time. And then they tell us to do that. And that's not the way to paint realism. You don't go hacking at it. You can, but most realists work inside of a drawing. They'll draw on something first and almost make what's like a paint by numbers painting, because then you can be guided. Then you can really twist your wrist and make some interesting choices because you know where you're going in your painting. And all that aside, like the idea of the truth with that, like the truth of going, that's how I'm perceiving that depth and that light and this real thing that's over there, that model or that still life or landscape or what have you, then I feel like it's even better to say, these are the colors that really carry because they're the colors that I'm seeing. Like, we see cyan, magenta, yellow because it can come through we can break light, RGB light, through a spectrum and say, that's the truth. That's the real rainbow. Cad red, cad yellow, great fucking colors, but they're not the real primaries. And then when we're thinking about this of subtractive color mixing, so you mix two colors together and they always make a darker one, where if it's light, a red and a green will make yellow. More light sources make a lighter color. When I have students making art, when I make art, a computer, I feel, contrary to a lot of people's belief, that's more realistic than this is because it's using light, which is why we see in the first place. So ... on that, like, I'm trying to work on a handbook for myself as I learn more and more about Photoshop, and now I can connect it to Renaissance painting because that's the association makes it great. Like, to learn ZBrush and 3D things takes me back to doing clay sculpture. It's the same interface, but you can't just do it with your arms. You have to plan the computer to do it. So it's a couple more steps, but oddly enough, it seems more true. I don't believe at all that that's true of AI, though. I think that's gross. And I think the result is pretty nasty looking too. We have 15 fingers and these jittery movies that were supposed to be so sophisticated. I liked the idea better when it was just something like, okay, Mona Lisa and Lisa Simpson, put together. And I like the idea of, I've never played with AI, but I like the idea of using myself as a hashtag, like, and see what happens, see what AI can, what I can rob from myself using AI. Maybe I should make an Alan Fulle and Doug Parry painting together in it. But, it's. We were talking about, what is it, GPI or whatever the thing is for the writing program for AI. What was it, GPS or something like that,
Chat.
Yeah, that one. Like, I recently got a note from a doctor in that, or a doctor's nurse. It's like, okay, doctors, nurses write their emails for them a lot, but then this one was one step farther, that the nurse used chat, whatever it is. And I get this email back going, this is not from a human. This is not like the human touch I'm paying for, so I just ignored it. But yeah, man, we're researching that at DigiPen. I talked about it with a million different artists, and it's like, all I know is that the more people are saying, like, I don't need to do a portrait because I can do mine in the style of Rembrandt because I have, AI. I'll go, well, good, you go for that. That's great. I'm offering a different thing altogether in a portrait. It's a handmade thing there's my interpretation of you right there, totally different. But you go ahead and do that, because the more people do that, the rarer this becomes, because this is already rare. I mean, it's a figurative painting, an oil paint, for God's sake. Could I be any more dead? But that's something that's important, I think, is that Marjorie Wellish, who is my art history teacher at Pratt, she writes for Bomb magazine. She's an incredibly smart woman. Said it doesn't matter if you paint like Richard Diebenkorn in 2024. Just know where you sit in the art historical conversation. So if one's paintings are like Cy Twombly's or like Arnulf Rainer's or like Candy Wiley or whoever, you have to know where you sit on that bench. And I've had that conversation with people before, because that's why I mentioned Richard Diebenkorn, one of my favorite painters, and for sure a place I was in, segueing from more abstraction into this stuff, where it was about formalism and abstraction and the realism meeting. And I had a dealer in New York just school me and say, like, this is Richard Diebenkorn. You're not doing anything new. I'm like, I am. Look at those people's clothing. It's today. I mean, there's a lot of things that are new. The technique is the same. And I told her, I get you. I understand that. I'm not going to apologize for it, though, because I love that guy's work, and it's where I'm at right now. I'm using it to do that. Name a painter who doesn't do that, Marjorie Wellish showed us Thomas Hart Benton next to Jackson Pollock. Thomas Hart Benton's Jackson Pollock's teacher, right? Jackson Pollock, there's Blue Poles or some famous painting, famous Thomas Hart Benton painting, and then she showed another slide of the same painting by Thomas Hart Benton, upside down, same composition as Pollock, It happens. I mean, we have done it 15 times already today. We've influenced each other and bounced off each other. It's normal. It's great. Ultimately, I think an art dealer's idea is, like, can they sell paintings? And maybe that art dealer's clientele had enough Richard Diebenkorn, or they just needed something different. I get that. And I'm relegated now to places that like the work because they get that it doesn't matter if it's old-fashioned. And that's okay with me. I'll have to go that way, you find your niche, right? You find the people that are going to support you. And it's less so in Seattle. It's growing. You mentioned that too. Like, I see the same thing, like young painters. There was a woman, I don't know if it was a woman or a man or who they were, showing at Home Team recently. I think it was called Beautiful Ugly was the name of the show. I don't know the artist's name, but figurative to be sure.
Kate.
Yeah.
Catlin.
What's their name?
Catlin.
Okay. Cool work. I've showed with that person before at Steve Gilbert's gallery. But yeah, I think the figurative stuff's coming back. But it kind of comes and goes, and that's okay too. Things come and go out of fashion or whatever. And I'm not real good at fashion. I just keep doing it, and so I'll let the fashion meet me if it does. Like I said before too, it happened a lot in New York. You'd go and say, "Oh, there's a Lucian Freud show," and then suddenly, boom! The next month, everybody pulled out their figurative people, and it would go for a while. And then even my portrait commissions would go up because people would get that, But yeah, it's a fun world that we're in.
Well, Doug, that was an incredible interview. I hope the cards are still going, but that was really wonderful.
Thank you for having me. It was nice talking to you, as always.
Hi, come on in. I'm Doug Parry. Welcome to my home. Welcome to my studio. This is my childhood home. I grew up here and then inherited the house a few years ago. And this is my studio and my childhood bedroom. Crazy. And it's tiny. It's the smallest studio I've had since graduate school, probably. And so it has to be really efficient, and I kind of love that, and I've noticed that I love that more and more as I get older, is efficient art making practices. I do gouache still ice on that table. There's now a portrait resting there because I don't have any other room for it, but normally that's where I work on those when I'm in that mood. I draw on this wall, and now there's a painting being displayed on there too for today. But this is where I usually draw, make illustrations for books, graphic novels if I'm making them. And then this space over here is just a look at work, and these are all maybe 1 or 2 days into it. These are pretty young paintings right here. But they'll get much more fleshed out over the course of a couple more weeks or months maybe. And then behind right here is a painting that just finished of my wife, who's a nurse. I'm doing a series of paintings of women, and in particular, this little sub-series of underappreciated women, nurses, teachers, waitresses, things like that, people like that. And yeah, it's nice. I've got a tiny, tiny palette table that's usually actually like an old 1940s secretary table or a typing table. And that's all I need. And I guess the reason I'm talking about the size and the efficiency of this so much is I always have people say, you need a bigger studio, you need a bigger space. And I don't think I do, because I'm painting smaller as I get older. And I'm loving that because I can put more action and more intensity into a smaller piece. It doesn't get so spread out. It doesn't need to be big. And more people, turns out, buy smaller paintings. What do you know? They can fit them in their house. And I'm at least that practical too. But yeah, it's my favorite room on earth. Everything I need is right here. I have all these supplies. I just kind of keep stocking them like they're groceries, and this is my favorite place on earth. Easily. And I think it's only for one. I always kind of call this the cockpit too. I don't know what else to say, in a way. And I think that's the point, is I don't know what else to say because I usually don't say anything in here. I listen to music and I paint, and I'm so quiet and so isolated. That's, I think, why I got into doing portraiture, too, more lately over the last couple years, is because I'm lonely. And I get to interact with people. I get to draw them. And I get to draw out of them. I get to pull them out through a portrait, or hopefully, that's the idea, is to get someone's real personality out. And that sounds so incredibly cheesy to say, but it really is difficult to do. It's hard enough to get anatomy correct on a portrait, and lighting and color and surface. But if you can really bring out someone's life out through a painting like that, I think that's where it's at. That to me is on par with the energy you would get out of an abstract painting or a real expressive painting. So anyway, that's my studio. It's small, and that's all there is to say about it, I think. Hi, I'm Doug Parry. I'm a Seattle artist, and welcome to my studio. It's the smallest studio I've ever had, tiny. But I love it because of that. I love how small it is. I love how efficient it has to be. I'm working on these two paintings right now, and these are all part of a series called Whoa, which is a series of paintings of women, and only women, who are posing or portraying in some way their dissatisfaction, their fear, their worry about the country ever since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, since 2016, since the country kind of basically changed and was even more acutely against them. And part of that series is painting occupations, different women. This is a friend of mine named Stephanie, who is a high school art teacher, and she's a great teacher. And so I wanted to paint a portrait of her kind of in that persona. Likewise, I've painted a painting of my wife, who's a nurse. Both underappreciated jobs. Both women I know are just worked to the bone. This is a painting of my friend Isis, and actually most of my models, while Isis is a professional model, most of them are friends too. So I'm calling this kind of work narrative portraits. So it's not just a portrait. I don't consider myself necessarily just a portrait artist. But she's trying to climb out of a window. She's trying to escape. And most of the figurative or full figure paintings I've been making have been depicting that. Women disgruntled, uncomfortable, wrestling with something. And I've about 5 big paintings into that process, but I think I'm just now scratching the surface. But yeah, this is where they all happen. Little tiny space, big ideas, hopefully. And my concern is, and what my years of experience helped me with this too, is just I'm more concerned about how these paintings look in the gallery than I am how they look in my studio, because I make them here. Still, it's my favorite place in the world. Presently, I am really satisfied because I feel like I'm on a really good path, a really honest path for myself. And while I would never trade my background, would never trade my history for anything, sometimes I wish I'd started painting when I'm 40 so I wouldn't have to make all these terrible paintings and suffer and all that kind of stuff. But right now where I'm at, I feel that all I can do is get better. And that just comes from reps and making more and more paintings, obviously, but to look at people, make more dynamic compositions. And the more I make paintings of people, the more I learn about people, and the more I learn that I can ask them to do in paintings. I just see it being the place I just don't want to get off this road. I just want to keep going in this direction until I can't do it anymore. I need to make a painting that's very realistic and that's very emotional at the same time. This is the house I grew up in, and just over a decade ago we lost my mom, and thought I was going to flip this house and just sell it, but I thought, free house. Plus it's got a lot of energy in it that I love, and I do a lot of work that's autobiographical, and if I'm going to talk about myself, this is a perfect place to do that. Plus, how can you not love this house? It's a little Boeing bungalow in the middle of nowhere.
Thanks for watching Alan Fulle's Art Interviews. I hope you learned as much as I did about visual art from the Pacific Northwest and beyond. Please like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes coming soon.